Hey there, everyone. I hope you are all doing good. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the new Schlappi Engineering module, the Nibbler. It is a 4-bit accumulator and a shift register. What it's made for is mainly to create, out of one clock, many gates, 2 stepped voltages, and it can be used either at low frequency to make like clock divisions, drum sequencer, and step voltages, or it can be used as an Audiorate processor. If you send it an Audiorate signal, like a square wave or something, it will create subdivisions of this, so sub-oscillators at different octaves, and it can also create noise. It's also important to note the presence of that massive reset button that is actually doing quite the opposite of what you may think, is stopping stuff to happen instead of starting them. The fact that it's stopping things actually makes it very different in use at what you might expect, and you might come up with some stuff that, like I just did with the noise thing, is that you can cut it out whenever you want. It's really fun to use. So in this video, I'm not going to show you everything that it does. I'm mostly going to show you a few examples of patches that I've been enjoying with it, and make you listen to a few music that I've done with it since I've been testing the prototype. First, you need to send it a gate. I'm going to use the gate out of the SQ1. So even when it receives the clock, if there is no add switch turned on, which means the up position, nothing is happening. But now it starts to do some things. The way I prefer to use it so far is like this. I will take this sine output to a boundary VCA, and I will trig that boundary with one of the gate out of the Nibbler. And make sure that I have this knob turned on to control the VCA with the boundary envelope. And I will send that out to the 100 grid, which is my output module in this case. So if I send the stepped out to the pitch here, I have some sort of arpeggio. So if you have your oscillator in free running mode, you will have weird pitches like this that you need to first attenuate in order to make them behave a little bit better. What's great about the treble is that we can use it in ratio mode, so the oscillator will only play divisions or multiplication of the main oscillator. And then the Nibbler creates other types of pattern depending on how you flip the different add switches. This is, for example, a ramp up. If I flip to subtract, I will have a ramp down. Back to add. If I add 2, on top of one. I'm adding 3, and it makes a new pattern. And so this makes it a very playable thing, even though it's quite hard to wrap your hand around how it works. Just think about it as something that just adds little squares on top of each other's that creates a staircase pattern, and depending on how you flip the switches, you get different staircase patterns. Now let's use the second oscillator. The same configuration basically. It's also in ratio mode. I'm going to use the second step voltages to control this one. And if you start to use the FM on board of the tree-body and the phase modulation, you get some weird stuff happening, which are quite fun. I also like to use the gates to modulate things. Then you can also try to send gates all of these inputs. Okay, so here is almost the same patch as before, with 2 different voices being played by both stepped voltages. And I want to show you a few funky stuff that can be done with the offset switches over there and the sync async mode. Once again, the gates are modulating the 100 grid filter directly. No envelope, nothing. Each voice has its own VCA inside the boundaries. So I have this 7-step pattern with 3 gates in it in the SQ1 that is going to one of the gate inputs. We don't hear its effect much. This is without it. The difference is quite subtle until you set the thing to async mode. This means that the shift register inside the module will update anytime it receives something new, instead of waiting for a clock. This creates much more dynamic things. If you start sending stuff that aren't synced with your main tempo inside this, it can become quite crazy. Also, one thing you might notice is that I'm not sending a regular clock this time. There is some steps that aren't getting triggered. This kind of behavior does make it very, very versatile as a pattern creation tool. Let's go back with a regular clock. Go back to sync mode. Also a good time to show that when there is stuff going to the gate inputs, they are still active when you empty the register by pressing the buttons. But I'm going to use the CV row to create more gates and see what happens. This is another performance aspect of it, is that if you're using the gate input, you can have one pattern going while you're not pressing the button. And another pattern going when you press the button. One other thing I wanted to show you here is the phase switches, which are going to change the phase relationship between the two stepped outputs. Okay, so let me explain to you what was going on in this patch. This was the basic setting. I have the clock from the SQ1 clocking the Nibbler. This boundary is triggered by out 8. It's basically triggering a kick sound made out of the center oscillator here. That sort of snare sound is also from the tree body, like two modulating oscillators together to make that kind of noise. I used one of the gate out as a modulation to change the length of the attack, which doesn't happen when you have only one switch up like right now, but if I start to add some other stuff, it will change the pattern basically. Here we go. This is what I mean when I say that the Nibbler is a highly playable module. By flipping switches, you can do some very fun stuff. Flipping the add and subtract will also change gate. Then, if I add a little bit of resonance, I have this last gate here that is basically just modulating the resonance. It creates that weirdo clicky rhythm on top, which was already there, but it adds a few squishing things. And I do also have one of the stepped outputs modulating the cutoff. And this brings a sort of melodic elements or tonal, weird tonal element to the patch. Now we are going to talk about Audiorate use of the nibbler, and actually the use of more than one nibbler. So here I have a saw wave from the tree body going to the 100 grit. The second nibbler is clocked, it is just making the stepped modulation on the filter. The melody is played by the SQ1 here. This nibbler, the one we have been using so far, is receiving another saw wave from the tree body, and we are listening to it. On this input. Let's listen to it alone. So if we flip all the switches back to 0, we have nothing. Here we have 1 octave division, a square wave, sub-oscillator basically. 4, we have 2 octave down. We can add different octaves at the same time, which is fun. And we can modulate that. So let's patch the carry out of the second nibbler that is clocked on the tempo to the carry in. So it gives us some sort of pinging. But we can combine it with the flipping switches. We could also use the individual gates to trigger the octaves. Which can make some sort of arpeggio type of sub-oscillations. here is a tiny variation on the patch that I've shown before with the Audiorate thing. We are only listening to the Audiorate divisions. This Nibbler. And what I wanted to show you here is that, again, I have gates from this Nibbler triggering the gate, so we have that division pattern. The original sounds like this, actually. And what we can do now is sending Audiorate modulation to one of these gate inputs. It's already plugged in with the boundary, but it's not cycling yet, so let's see how it sounds. It sounds like a sort of weird frequency modulation. If it's not Audiorate, it makes things bug a little bit. Of course, you have to be in the async mode. Otherwise, you don't hear it that much. This is the end of this video. Many thanks to Schlappi Engineering for trusting me in demoing this awesome module and to try the prototype. It's a real blast, this one. Pretty wild thing. I'm not sure I've fully wrapped my head around it. I'm still struggling a little bit with the shift register part and how to control it. But still, there's room for more videos. So, thanks to you for watching. Feel free to go have a visit at my Patreon if you want to support the channel while grabbing some samples and jams, or even some teaching. And you can buy some gear using the affiliate links in the description if you want to support the channel by buying yourself some stuff. Thanks again. See you next time. I leave you with that full techno-ish track so you can enjoy it. Bye bye.